The Empress was amazed that a human soldier defied her army single-handedly. The planet Veora was quiet, too quiet for the soldiers who patrolled its rocky plains. Smoke still drifted from the ruins of small settlements, the remnants of skirmishes that had left the human colonists scattered and fearful. The sky was darkened by the massive fleet of Empress Zalira, hovering like a storm waiting to strike. She had conquered countless worlds, and Veora was supposed to fall easily. Her armies were vast, disciplined, and armed with weapons that humans had only dreamed of. Yet, among the humans on this battered world, one soldier had already begun to defy fate. Lieutenant Marcus Kane stepped off his shuttle, the wind whipping against his uniform. His face was calm, though his eyes reflected the sharp focus of a man who had survived too much to be afraid. The colony he had been sent to protect was small, just a scattering of miners and engineers who had never imagined a war could reach them. Marcus had arrived alone, a single human against the might of a galactic empire. He was not there to challenge the entire army directly. He was there to survive, to protect, and to prove that one human could change the outcome of a battle if they used their mind as well as their strength. As Marcus walked through the settlement, he could see the fear etched on the faces of the colonists. Their homes were barely standing, the fields burned and scorched by alien bombardments. Many had fled into the caves and tunnels that dotted the planet, seeking safety from the relentless patrols that scoured the land. The Empress's army moved with the confidence of those who had never known defeat, but Marcus had learned that confidence could be broken, if only one knew how to strike. He crouched behind a ruined wall and studied the patrols moving across the ridge. The soldiers were disciplined, their formation perfect, but their movements were predictable. They were trained to fight strength with strength, numbers with numbers, but they had no experience with someone who thought differently. Marcus saw the patterns, the weak points, the gaps that could be exploited. His mind raced, calculating every possibility. The colonists watched from their hiding places, whispering among themselves. They had never seen a human soldier like this before. Marcus moved quietly, slipping between the shadows. He avoided the patrols, using the terrain to his advantage. A fallen boulder became a shield, a narrow crevice became a hiding place. Every step was deliberate, measured, precise. He planted small explosives, traps that could disable the enemy vehicles without risking the lives of the colonists. He moved like a ghost, leaving the patrols confused and wary. By the time the first squad realized something was wrong, Marcus was already gone, melting into the rocks and dust like a shadow. High above the battlefield, Empress Zalira observed through her floating command platform. She reclined on her throne, her gaze sharp and calculating as her advisors reported the strange disturbances. One patrol had been destroyed without warning, another had disappeared entirely. Reports were coming in, conflicting and confusing. The Empress raised an eyebrow. She had expected humans to scatter, to fall in panic at the sight of her armies. Yet here was one human moving like a predator, striking with precision, disappearing before anyone could catch him. "Who is this human?" she demanded. Her voice was calm, but it carried the weight of authority that silenced all who dared speak. "No human has ever survived against us alone." A general, a tall alien with silver eyes and a scarred face, bowed deeply. "My Empress, this soldier, he is unlike any human we have encountered. He does not flee, he does not panic. He moves with purpose and intelligence. Our squads cannot predict him." The Empress leaned forward slightly, her interest piqued. "Send scouts." "I want to see him for myself." Below, Marcus set another trap. This time, he had calculated the exact path the enemy would take. He rigged a supply transport with explosives and covered it with rocks and debris. The patrol approached, confident that no human could resist them. Marcus waited in the shadows, every muscle tense, every sense alert. As the transport passed the trigger point, he activated the device remotely. There was a sudden explosion, throwing the patrol into chaos. Soldiers scrambled, vehicles stalled, and for a moment, the battlefield belonged to a single human. The colonists emerged cautiously from their hiding spots, watching Marcus as he moved among the chaos. He helped an injured miner, carrying her to safety, his face calm and resolute. For the first time in days, the colonists felt hope. They whispered among themselves, telling stories of the soldier who had defied the empire. Marcus did not seek fame, but he understood the power of hope. Even one human could inspire others to fight when they thought all was lost. High above, Empress Zalira's eyes narrowed. She watched Marcus with fascination. Her advisors were anxious, warning her that one human could not possibly resist the might of her army. Yet she could not look away. There was something about his movements, his determination, his unwavering courage that intrigued her. She had conquered worlds, destroyed armies, and yet this human soldier made her pause. "Prepare a reconnaissance probe," she ordered. "I will see him myself." The probe, a sleek orb of energy and metal, descended silently toward the battlefield. Marcus, unaware of its presence, continued his work. He moved with confidence, setting small fires to distract the patrols, collapsing weak structures to block their path, and rescuing more colonists from danger. Every action was calculated, designed not only to survive but to challenge the army on its own terms. The probe recorded every move, transmitting it back to the Empress. She watched as Marcus faced an entire squad alone, using their own weapons against them, disabling armored vehicles and forcing them to retreat. She was amazed. How could a single human outthink trained soldiers, avoid detection, and still protect those weaker than himself? Her mind, trained to analyze armies and strategy, could not fully comprehend what she saw. Marcus paused for a moment, surveying the battlefield. Smoke rose from the wreckage, soldiers scrambled to regroup, and the colonists looked to him with admiration. He did not smile, did not boast. He simply prepared for the next challenge. He knew this was only the beginning. The Empress would not ignore his defiance for long, and he would need every ounce of his skill, courage, and cunning to survive what was coming. As night fell on Veora, Marcus moved quietly to a high vantage point. From there, he could see the full scope of the Empress's fleet, thousands of ships hovering in formation, their lights glinting against the dark sky. He knew he was outnumbered, but he also knew that numbers alone did not win battles. Strategy, determination, and the courage to act when others faltered could turn the tide. In the distance, the probe hovered, observing him, sending information back to the Empress. She leaned forward, her face illuminated by the glow of the hollow screen. For the first time in her career, she felt a strange emotion, curiosity mixed with respect. This human soldier was not merely surviving, he was defying the Empire itself. And that defiance, that spark of courage, was something she had not expected to see. Marcus watched the stars above, thinking of the countless battles he had survived, the friends he had lost, and the colony he was sworn to protect. He was not a hero by choice. He was a soldier doing what he must to ensure the survival of his people. Yet he felt the weight of destiny pressing on him. Something larger than this planet, larger than even the war itself, was beginning to stir. The colonists gathered around him in the shadows, whispering encouragement, sharing stories of his bravery. Marcus nodded silently, acknowledging them without words. He knew they had to stay strong, to trust in their own abilities as much as in his. The human spirit, even when outnumbered and outgunned, could rise to meet any challenge. He was living proof of that truth. Above, Empress Zalira continued to watch. She could see the determination in his eyes, the careful precision of his movements, and the unwavering commitment to protect others. It was not fear that drove him, nor blind courage, but a combination of intelligence, instinct, and a moral compass that guided every action. For the first time, she questioned the arrogance of her empire, the certainty that any human could be crushed without thought. Marcus prepared for the night. He set traps, checked on the colonists, and mapped the terrain for the next day's defenses. Every action was deliberate, every choice critical. The Empress's army would return with more force, more strategy, more determination. But Marcus was ready. One human could defy an empire if they were willing to think, to act, and to inspire others to stand beside them. As the twin moons of Veora rose in the sky, casting a pale light over the rocky landscape, Marcus stood alone on a ridge, looking down at the sleeping colonists. He knew the coming days would test him in ways he had never imagined, but he was not afraid. He had survived impossible odds before, and he would do so again. The story of this human soldier had only just begun, and already it was shaping the course of a war that no one, not even the Empress, could ignore. Somewhere above, Empress Zalira watched, silently acknowledging the strength of a single human who dared to challenge her vast armies. She could not yet understand him, but she would not forget him. And in that moment, the seeds of a battle unlike any the galaxy had ever seen were planted. A battle that would test the courage, ingenuity, and heart of humanity against the might of an empire. The morning on Veora was tense and quiet, as if the planet itself held its breath. The colonists were awake, moving carefully through the rocky terrain, checking their defenses and preparing for what they knew would come. Lieutenant Marcus Kane had spent the night mapping out the positions of the Empress's army. Even though he was only one man against a massive force, he knew that careful planning and precise action could make the difference between survival and destruction. Marcus gathered the colonists in a hidden clearing. His eyes scanned each face, seeing the fear and doubt that lingered despite the hope he had inspired the night before. "Listen," he said firmly, his voice steady and calm. "We don't have the numbers, but we do have something they don't: our brains, our courage, and the element of surprise. If we move carefully and work together, we can protect this colony and make them pay for every step they take into our lands." The colonists nodded, their confidence growing with every word. Marcus did not promise easy victory, he promised possibility. That for them was more than enough. From her observation deck high above the battlefield, Empress Zalira was growing impatient. The reports she received were baffling. Her soldiers were trained to conquer, to overwhelm, to destroy. And yet this human soldier continued to evade them, striking with precision, and then disappearing. She could see his movements even from her command platform, and she found herself both frustrated and intrigued. "This human," she said, her tone calm but sharp, "he moves like he knows the terrain better than we do. Every strike is calculated. He is not reckless. Find out how he does it. Study him." Her generals looked at each other uneasily. They had fought countless species across the galaxy, yet none had displayed such intelligence and adaptability. "My Empress," one of them said, "it is unlike anything we have faced. He uses our own strategies against us, but with his own unexpected twists. We cannot anticipate his moves." Zalira's eyes narrowed. "Then we adapt. If he is clever, then we must be cleverer. Do not underestimate him, but neither do you need to destroy him immediately. I want to see him act again. I want to understand why one human can defy the might of my entire army." Below, Marcus was already moving. The first patrol of the day advanced cautiously, unaware that their movements had been anticipated. Marcus used a narrow canyon to conceal himself. From that vantage, he could see the patrols approaching, their numbers strong but their movements rigid. He had studied their formations, their tendencies, and the way they reacted under pressure. He triggered a small rock slide, sending debris crashing down on the patrol's path. The soldiers scattered, attempting to regroup, but Marcus was already in motion. He ran along the canyon wall, using the shadows to move undetected. With precise timing, he dropped small, concealed devices, traps that disabled vehicles and blocked supply routes. One by one, the patrols were slowed, their numbers reduced, and their confidence shaken. The colonists watched from safe positions, amazed at his skill. Marcus did not waste a moment on hesitation. Every step was calculated. Every action had a purpose. He even saved a young engineer from being captured, guiding her through hidden tunnels to safety, while using his body and the terrain to distract the soldiers. From her platform, the Empress watched intently as Marcus continued his work. He moved like a phantom, striking at the heart of her army's supply lines without ever being caught. He was not just surviving, he was actively changing the course of the battle. Her curiosity deepened. No human had ever faced her armies with such courage and precision. Marcus knew that the moment would come when subtle sabotage would not be enough. The army would adapt, they would coordinate, and they would come for him directly. He had to prepare for the confrontation that would test not only his skill, but his ability to inspire the colonists to fight alongside him. The patrols regrouped, bringing reinforcements with them. They approached a small settlement, intending to burn and pillage. Marcus waited in the shadows, his mind calculating every possibility. As the enemy reached the outer edge of the village, he triggered a series of traps. Explosions that blocked roads, false signals that lured soldiers into ambushes, and collapsing structures that created barriers. The patrol was thrown into chaos. The colonists, seeing the human soldier's cleverness, began to fight alongside him, using whatever tools they could find. Marcus moved quickly, guiding them, giving instructions, and showing that courage could be contagious. Even the youngest colonists found strength in his leadership. The patrol tried to regroup, but Marcus had anticipated every move. Vehicles were disabled, soldiers trapped, and the remaining forces forced to retreat. For the first time, a part of the Empress's army had been defeated by one human and a small group of colonists. High above, Empress Zalira felt a spark of admiration. She had faced countless warriors, generals, and strategists, yet Marcus Kane was different. His mind, his courage, and his willingness to risk himself to protect others had created an unpredictability her army could not counter. She realized that this was no ordinary human. This was something extraordinary. Marcus took a moment to breathe. The colonists cheered quietly, careful not to draw attention from the enemy scouts still above. He looked over the battlefield, seeing the destruction caused by the traps, but also the signs of life and resilience. For every soldier defeated, for every vehicle destroyed, he knew the humans could survive if they trusted their own courage. He moved to a new position, aware that the enemy would soon send their elite forces. These were the soldiers trained for the toughest battles across the galaxy, soldiers who had never known defeat. Marcus did not flinch. He studied the terrain, the enemy patterns, and the potential advantages he could exploit. He knew that human intelligence, combined with adaptability and courage, could turn even the smallest advantage into victory. The first elite unit approached, moving with speed and precision. Marcus watched from behind a ridge, calculating the distance, the timing, and the best way to strike. When they reached the edge of the canyon, he acted. Explosions, smoke, and misdirection threw the unit into confusion. They attempted to regroup, but Marcus anticipated their moves. Using captured enemy tech and his knowledge of human tactics, he disabled their vehicles and forced them to retreat, one by one. The colonists watched in awe. Marcus did not just survive. He was teaching them, showing them how courage, ingenuity, and careful planning could challenge even the strongest foes. They whispered stories to each other about the human soldier who could defy an entire army, stories that would grow with every retelling. Empress Zalira continued to observe, her curiosity growing into fascination. This human did not fight with brute force or blind courage. He fought with intelligence, with strategy, and with a moral compass that guided his actions. She realized that she was witnessing something rare, something extraordinary. One human alone had turned a battlefield into a place where her army faltered, where her plans were challenged, and where the strength of a single species shone brighter than her vast fleet. Marcus prepared for the night, knowing that the Empress would not let him remain unchallenged for long. He reinforced the colonists' shelters, set traps along the ridges, and checked his supplies. Every step was deliberate, every choice critical. He understood the stakes. The Empress's army would return, stronger and more focused, but Marcus was ready. One human could hold back an empire if they thought carefully, acted courageously, and inspired others to do the same. The colonists gathered around him, grateful for his guidance and protection. Marcus spoke quietly, reminding them that survival depended not only on his actions, but on their own courage and intelligence. "We may be few," he said, "but together we are strong. Remember, it is not numbers that win battles, but the heart and mind behind them." Above, the Empress studied him, her eyes tracing his movements, noting the confidence and precision in every action. She felt a mixture of frustration and admiration. This human soldier was unlike any enemy she had faced. His ability to think, to adapt, and to inspire those around him challenged everything she had ever known about humans. As the twin moons of Veora rose, casting silver light over the rocky landscape, Marcus stood on a ridge, looking out over the battlefield. He felt the weight of responsibility, the pressure of being alone against an empire, but he also felt a spark of determination. He knew that this was only the beginning. The days ahead would test him, but he was ready to meet every challenge. Empress Zalira, high above, continued to observe. She knew that the human soldier would not be easily defeated. He was clever, resourceful, and brave, qualities that no army could easily overcome. And in that moment, she understood that she was witnessing something remarkable, the indomitable spirit of humanity shining brightly against the might of an empire. Marcus moved among the colonists, checking on their preparations and reinforcing their defenses. Every decision, every step was designed to maximize their chances of survival. The Empress's scouts would report back, and more forces would come, but Marcus was ready. He had faced impossible odds before, and he would face them again. The story of one human soldier who defied an empire single-handedly was only beginning to unfold, and already it was shaping the destiny of Veora. The following day dawned cold and gray over Vieira. Marcus Kane stood atop a rocky ridge, surveying the landscape with a careful eye. The terrain stretched for miles, jagged cliffs and narrow valleys forming natural barriers that could be used to his advantage. He knew the Empress would not allow his previous victories to go unanswered. Her army would adapt, refine their strategies, and strike with more precision than before. But Marcus had learned long ago that human ingenuity, courage, and adaptability could overcome any odds. The colonists were busy preparing the defenses Marcus had instructed them to build overnight. They carried supplies, reinforced structures, and set traps along the most likely paths of the approaching forces. Marcus moved among them, offering guidance, encouragement, and reassurance. Even the youngest miners were helping, learning quickly from his methods and taking pride in their own contributions. It was the human spirit in action, unity, determination, and hope shining brightly in the shadow of overwhelming danger. From high above, Empress Zalira observed the preparations with a keen eye. She had studied Marcus since the first encounter, fascinated by his ability to anticipate, adapt, and act decisively. His intelligence, bravery, and moral compass made him unlike any other human she had ever encountered. She felt a mixture of frustration and admiration. How could a single human with no reinforcements manage to frustrate her entire army? "This is extraordinary," she said to her generals. "He is not merely fighting, he is teaching his people. He is turning fear into strength. We cannot underestimate him, yet we cannot let him continue to succeed. Prepare the elite units. I want to see if he can be tested by true professionals." The elite units, soldiers from across her empire trained to defeat the toughest opponents, were deployed immediately. They were armed with advanced weaponry, protected by reinforced armor, and moving with precision and confidence. Their orders were simple: locate Marcus Kane and neutralize him. The Empress wanted not just victory, but proof that human defiance could be broken by skill, discipline, and force. Marcus, aware of the movements of the elite units, prepared a series of countermeasures. He used the terrain to his advantage, studying every ridge, canyon, and tunnel. He set traps, planned ambushes, and devised tactics that forced the enemy to move cautiously. He understood that the army would be relentless, but he also knew that human creativity and intelligence could offset any technological or numerical advantage. The first encounter came quickly. The elite units entered a narrow canyon, expecting an easy sweep through the area. Marcus had anticipated this. From a hidden perch, he triggered a series of controlled rock slides and false signals, throwing the soldiers into confusion. They tried to regroup, but Marcus moved with uncanny precision, attacking only when he could gain the advantage. One by one, the elite soldiers found their plans disrupted, their formations broken, and their confidence shaken. Meanwhile, the colonists watched from safe positions, learning and assisting where they could. They set fires to distract enemy patrols, collapsed weak walls to block paths, and guided Marcus to locations where he could strike most effectively. It was no longer just a battle of one man against an empire. It had become a battle of a people united by courage, intelligence, and determination. High above, Empress Zalira observed every move. She had not expected this. She had thought that humans could be crushed by fear and superior firepower. Yet here was one human, using his mind and skill to not only survive, but to inspire an entire colony to fight. The Empress was forced to acknowledge a truth she had never admitted before. Humans were resourceful, adaptable, and capable of extraordinary courage. Marcus continued to lead the defense, moving swiftly and decisively. He used captured alien technology to confuse and disable the elite units, turning their weapons against them when possible. Every move was deliberate, every action calculated. He did not act recklessly, he acted with purpose. He was teaching the colonists that intelligence, courage, and teamwork were just as powerful as any weapon. The elite soldiers, trained to overcome any challenge, began to recognize the pattern of Marcus's tactics. They had faced many dangerous opponents, but none had thought as creatively or adapted as quickly as this human. They realized that brute force alone would not succeed. They needed to anticipate, to strategize, to move as he expected, but Marcus had already anticipated that. Marcus lured a squad into a narrow canyon where traps had been set days before. Explosions created dust and confusion, and barriers forced the soldiers to split their formation. Marcus struck at the critical moments, disabling vehicles, disarming traps, and using the terrain to neutralize their advantage. Each victory, though small in scale, sent a message to both the colonists and the Empress. Human courage and intelligence could not be underestimated. The colonists cheered quietly as they saw Marcus succeed. They had begun to understand his methods, the importance of thinking ahead, and the power of coordinated action. Even the children watched, learning from a human who refused to be defeated. Marcus had become more than a soldier. He had become a symbol, a teacher, and a beacon of hope. Empress Zalira's curiosity grew with each passing hour. She could see the patterns, the strategies, and the cleverness of Marcus's actions. She realized that she was witnessing something rare, not just a soldier, but a leader, a strategist, and a symbol of human resilience. Her empire had never faced anything like this. She found herself questioning the arrogance of assuming that humans could be crushed without thought or consideration. As the day progressed, Marcus faced a particularly dangerous situation. A large detachment of elite soldiers moved to cut off the colony's access to water and supplies. Marcus knew that if they succeeded, the colonists would be trapped and vulnerable. He planned a bold maneuver, using a series of traps, diversions, and calculated strikes. With careful timing, he led the elite soldiers into a trap that used the terrain against them. Vehicles were overturned, soldiers disoriented, and Marcus moved in to disable key targets with precision strikes. The colonists watched in awe. They had never seen such courage, such intelligence, such determination. Marcus moved among them, guiding, instructing, and protecting. His presence gave them confidence. They began to see that human ingenuity and bravery could turn the tide even when faced with overwhelming odds. Empress Zalira leaned forward, her eyes narrowing. She could see Marcus in action, his movements precise, his decisions calculated, his courage unwavering. She had expected him to be defeated by now. Instead, he was shaping the battle, teaching his people, and challenging her assumptions about the human race. She realized that Marcus was not just a soldier. He was a human who embodied the best qualities of his species: intelligence, courage, and an unbreakable will. The sun began to set over Veora, casting long shadows across the rocky terrain. Marcus took a moment to breathe, surveying the battlefield and ensuring that the colonists were safe. He knew the Empress would continue to send forces, that the challenges would grow more difficult, and that the next day would be even more dangerous. But he was not afraid. He had faced impossible odds before, and he would face them again. The human spirit, fueled by courage, intelligence, and determination, could overcome challenges that seemed insurmountable. The colonists gathered around him, tired but hopeful. Marcus spoke quietly, reminding them of the importance of teamwork, courage, and intelligence. "We are outnumbered," he said, "but we are not powerless. One human can make a difference, but together we can change the outcome. Trust yourselves, trust each other. And never forget that courage and intelligence can overcome any force, no matter how great." High above, Empress Zalira watched Marcus and the colonists. She could see the loyalty, the courage, and the determination that he inspired. She realized that humans were unlike any other species she had conquered. They were resourceful, adaptable, and capable of extraordinary bravery. She could not ignore this truth any longer. Marcus Kane had shown her the power of a single human, and in doing so had begun to change her perception of humanity itself. As night fell over the planet, Marcus moved quietly among the colonists, checking defenses, reinforcing positions, and preparing for the inevitable attacks that would come with the next sunrise. He knew that the Empress would not sit idly by, and that her army would adapt and strike with even greater force. But Marcus was ready. He had faced the impossible before, and he would face it again, not alone but with a people who had learned to trust in their own courage and intelligence. Above, the Empress remained seated in her observation platform, her mind racing with thoughts she had never considered. She had conquered countless worlds, defeated numerous species, and built an empire that spanned the stars. Yet here was a single human soldier, defying her armies, teaching his people, and inspiring hope where she had expected fear. She realized that Marcus Kane was more than a soldier. He was a symbol of the human spirit, a reminder that courage, intelligence, and determination could overcome even the greatest obstacles. Marcus stood on a ridge, looking down at the sleeping colonists. He felt the weight of responsibility pressing on him, but also a spark of determination. The days ahead would test him in ways he had never imagined, but he was ready. The story of this human soldier, who had defied an entire empire, was only beginning to unfold, and already it was shaping the destiny of Veora and challenging the assumptions of one of the galaxy's most powerful rulers. The dawn on Veora arrived with a cold wind that swept. Across the rocky plains, Marcus Kane stood on a high ridge, his eyes scanning the terrain below. He could see the faint movement of the Empress's forces preparing for another advance. After the victories of the past days, he knew that the enemy would not underestimate him again. They would come stronger, more cautious, and better organized. But Marcus had never relied solely on luck or speed. He relied on observation, planning, and the intelligence of his mind. The colonists were busy preparing for the day. They moved quietly, reinforcing defenses, checking traps, and sharing supplies. Marcus had taught them to be self-reliant, to think critically, and to act boldly. Even those who had been terrified only days before were now confident, their courage bolstered by the knowledge that one human soldier could defy an entire army. Marcus moved among them, quietly guiding, advising, and observing. He knew that every small action mattered, every choice could influence the outcome of the day. High above, Empress Zalira observed the colony through her advanced surveillance devices. She had been fascinated by Marcus Kane from the moment she first saw him. His actions were not reckless, nor driven by fear or blind courage. He acted with intelligence, foresight, and an unshakable sense of purpose. Her advisors whispered concerns, insisting that a single human could not pose such a threat to her army. Yet she could see the truth for herself. "This human," she said quietly, almost to herself, "he is extraordinary. He moves like a master of strategy, yet he leads with compassion. He inspires others to fight, to think, and to act. How is it possible?" Her generals could only bow, their pride stung by the reality that they had been outmaneuvered by a single human. The Empress decided to take a closer look. She sent a reconnaissance team cloaked in advanced stealth technology to observe Marcus in detail. They would report his tactics, his methods, and perhaps find a weakness. Marcus, unaware of the cloaked observers, prepared for the incoming forces. He had studied their patterns and anticipated their movements. The elite soldiers would advance cautiously, relying on their training, but Marcus had already set traps, planned diversions, and identified key points where he could strike with maximum effect. Every step was deliberate, every action calculated. The first wave approached, moving through the rocky valleys in tight formation. Marcus watched quietly, waiting for the perfect moment to act. When the soldiers reached a narrow pass, he triggered a series of collapses, sending rocks and dust crashing down to block their path. Vehicles were disabled, soldiers disoriented, and their advance slowed. Marcus struck with precision, targeting the key positions that would disrupt their coordination. The colonists watched from hidden positions, inspired and amazed. Marcus was teaching them to act with intelligence, to use the environment to their advantage, and to fight with courage. Even those who had once been terrified now moved with purpose, guided by his instructions. They helped set traps, misdirect the enemy, and support Marcus in ways that amplified his effectiveness. The elite soldiers were trained to adapt, but Marcus had anticipated every contingency. He used their own technology against them, created diversions that split their forces, and struck decisively at critical moments. One by one, the enemy units were forced to retreat, their confidence shaken, their strategy in ruins. Marcus did not celebrate. He moved on, focused on the next challenge, aware that the Empress would not allow him to remain undefeated for long. Above, Empress Zalira watched in fascination. She could see Marcus's intelligence, his courage, and his leadership. He was not simply surviving, he was actively shaping the battle and inspiring his people. Her advisors urged her to destroy him, to send overwhelming forces, but she hesitated. She wanted to see the human act again, to understand the source of his remarkable courage and intellect. Marcus had anticipated that she would not ignore him forever. He had prepared for the possibility that the Empress herself might intervene, observing him directly. He moved with caution, using the terrain, the colonists, and his traps to maintain an advantage. His actions were precise, his timing perfect. He understood that the battle was no longer just about survival. It was about proving that one human, guided by intelligence and courage, could challenge even the mightiest empire. The day grew hotter as the sun rose higher, casting long shadows across the landscape. Marcus led the colonists in a series of carefully planned maneuvers, guiding them to intercept enemy forces at the most advantageous points. Traps were triggered, vehicles disabled, and soldiers forced into positions where they could be neutralized without unnecessary risk. Every action demonstrated the power of human intelligence and adaptability. The Empress watched quietly, her eyes following Marcus's every move. She could see the thought behind each decision, the courage behind each action, and the influence he had on the colonists. She realized that he was not just a soldier. He was a leader, a teacher, and a symbol of humanity's resilience. No wonder her army had struggled against him. He was not fighting alone. He had inspired an entire people to think, to act, and to defend themselves with ingenuity. Marcus paused for a moment, surveying the battlefield. He saw the smoke from the damaged vehicles, the scattered soldiers attempting to regroup, and the colonists moving confidently under his guidance. He knew the Empress would not be pleased with these outcomes. She would adapt, escalate, and send her most formidable forces. But Marcus was ready. He had faced impossible odds before and had survived through intelligence, courage, and determination. A new wave of enemy forces approached, larger and more disciplined than the previous ones. Marcus had anticipated this escalation. He moved quickly to adjust traps, reposition colonists, and prepare new strategies. Every soldier, every device, every structure was part of a larger plan designed to maximize the advantages of the human defenders. The colonists moved with confidence, trusting in his guidance and their own growing abilities. As the enemy advanced, Marcus triggered a series of coordinated ambushes. Smoke and debris filled the air, confusing the soldiers and slowing their advance. Vehicles were disabled, supply lines cut, and enemy units forced into positions where Marcus could strike with precision. The colonists assisted where they could, setting diversions, reinforcing barriers, and providing critical support. The elite soldiers were surprised and frustrated. They had trained to face the toughest opponents, yet they were consistently outmaneuvered. Marcus's intelligence, foresight, and adaptability had created chaos within their ranks. They realized that brute force alone could not succeed against a human who combined courage with careful planning. Above, Empress Zalira watched with growing fascination. She could see Marcus's brilliance, his courage, and his ability to inspire others. He was not just surviving, he was thriving, turning the battlefield into a place where human ingenuity and determination dominated. She realized that she had underestimated humans, that she had assumed them weak and predictable. Marcus Kane had proven that one human, guided by intelligence and courage, could challenge even the mightiest empire. The sun began to set, casting long shadows across the rocky plains. Marcus took a moment to regroup, checking on the colonists and reinforcing defenses. He knew the Empress would escalate further, sending larger forces and more sophisticated strategies. But he was not afraid. He had faced impossible odds before, and he would face them again. The story of a single human defying an empire was only growing, and Marcus Kane had become a symbol of hope, courage, and intelligence for all those who watched him. The colonists gathered around him, tired but determined. Marcus spoke quietly, reminding them of the importance of courage, intelligence, and unity. "We are outnumbered," he said, "but we are not powerless. Every action matters, every choice can change the outcome. Trust yourselves, trust each other, and remember that even one human can make a difference." Empress Zalira observed the human soldier and his people. She saw the loyalty, the courage, and the intelligence he inspired. She realized that humans were unlike any other species she had conquered. They were resourceful, adaptable, and capable of extraordinary bravery. Marcus Kane had shown her that the power of one human, combined with courage and intelligence, could defy even the greatest forces in the galaxy. As night fell over Veora, Marcus moved quietly among the colonists, ensuring that traps were ready, defenses were secure, and everyone was prepared for the next day. He knew that the Empress would not allow him to remain undefeated. Her forces would come with greater numbers, more advanced technology, and tighter coordination. But Marcus was ready. He had survived impossible odds before, and he would do so again, not alone but with a people who had learned to trust their own courage and intelligence. High above, the Empress continued to observe. She could see Marcus's intelligence, his courage, and the loyalty he inspired. She realized that he was more than a soldier. He was a leader, a teacher, and a symbol of human resilience. The human spirit, she understood now, was a force to be reckoned with, and Marcus Kane, defying her armies, was the living embodiment of that spirit. Marcus stood on a ridge, looking down at the sleeping colonists. He felt the weight of responsibility pressing on him, but also a spark of determination. The days ahead would test him in ways he had never imagined, but he was ready. The story of this human soldier who had defied an entire empire was only beginning to unfold. Already it was shaping the destiny of Veora and challenging the assumptions of one of the galaxy's most powerful rulers. The sun rose over Veora, casting its pale light on the jagged landscape. Marcus Kane stood on a ridge, his eyes scanning the horizon. The Empress had sent her full force, a combination of elite soldiers, heavy vehicles, and aerial units, all moving with precision to crush the human resistance once and for all. Marcus knew this would be the ultimate test. The survival of the colony and perhaps the fate of the planet depended on him. He was not alone. He had the colonists, trained and inspired, ready to stand with him. Yet even with their support, the challenge seemed almost insurmountable. The colony's defenders moved with quiet determination. Marcus had divided them into small units, each tasked with a specific role: traps, diversions, medical support, and supply management. Every colonist knew their place and understood their importance. Marcus had taught them to think strategically, to act decisively, and to remain calm under pressure. Even those who had been frightened and unsure only days ago now moved with confidence, trusting Marcus and themselves. High above, Empress Zalira watched her armies advance, her gaze fixed on Marcus. She had spent countless hours observing him, fascinated by his courage, intelligence, and leadership. He had defied her armies for days, turning fear into hope and inspiring his people to fight against overwhelming odds. She realized that he was not merely a soldier. He was a symbol of humanity's resilience, resourcefulness, and indomitable spirit. "This human," she murmured, "he is extraordinary. He is not fighting for conquest or power. He fights with purpose for his people, for hope. Perhaps humans are more dangerous than I imagined." Her generals murmured in response, urging her to send additional forces, but Zalira shook her head. She wanted to see Marcus one final time. She wanted to witness the full extent of his courage, ingenuity, and influence. Marcus observed the advancing forces carefully. They moved like a single, coordinated entity, their training and discipline evident in every step. Yet Marcus was not intimidated. He had studied every movement, every pattern, and every weakness. The terrain was his ally. The colonists were his partners. And above all, he had the advantage of unpredictability. No army, no matter how vast, could anticipate every action of a human who thought freely, acted decisively, and inspired others to act with him. The first wave of the attack reached the outer defenses. Traps were triggered with precision. Hidden pits, collapsing rock slides, and strategically placed explosives disrupted the enemy's advance. Marcus moved silently among the chaos, striking at key targets and guiding the colonists to reinforce weak points. Every action was deliberate, every decision critical. Even in the face of overwhelming numbers, Marcus remained calm and focused. The elite soldiers tried to adapt, but Marcus had anticipated their tactics. He had prepared countermeasures for their strategies, set traps for their vehicles, and created diversions that split their formations. One by one, they were forced to retreat or be neutralized. The colonists, emboldened by Marcus's leadership, moved with confidence, assisting wherever possible. They had become more than survivors. They were a force to be reckoned with, united by courage and intelligence. High above, the Empress leaned forward, her eyes fixed on the battlefield. She could see Marcus in action, his movements precise, his decisions calculated, his courage unwavering. He was not just surviving. He was shaping the battle, inspiring his people, and challenging the might of her empire. Her generals urged her to order a direct assault, to overwhelm him with sheer numbers, but Zalira hesitated. She wanted to see the full measure of his abilities, to understand what made him so extraordinary. Marcus knew that the Empress might intervene directly. He had anticipated it. The final phase of his plan relied on drawing the enemy into a position where the terrain, the traps, and the colonists' support would give him the decisive advantage. He moved with precision, guiding the colonists to strategic locations and preparing for the final confrontation. The elite units and heavy vehicles advanced once more, this time with more caution. They had been frustrated by previous encounters and were determined to succeed. Yet Marcus was ready. He had studied their movements, anticipated their strategies, and prepared countermeasures that would turn the battlefield in his favor. The first strike came. Explosions shook the ground, dust and smoke filled the air, and chaos spread through the enemy ranks. Marcus moved swiftly, taking advantage of the confusion to disable key vehicles and neutralize critical threats. The colonists moved alongside him, following his instructions with precision. Every action amplified the effectiveness of the others. Together, they were a force that the Empress's army had not anticipated, a human soldier and a united people defying an empire. The elite soldiers tried to regroup, but Marcus anticipated their moves. He used captured technology to confuse them, rerouted their formations, and struck at critical points. The colonists reinforced barriers, guided reinforcements, and helped manage the traps. Each victory, though small in scale, was decisive. The enemy forces were struggling to adapt to the humans' intelligence and leadership. Empress Zalira watched, her fascination growing. Marcus Kane was not merely surviving. He was orchestrating a defense that combined strategy, intelligence, and courage in a way she had never seen. The colonists had become a coordinated force under his leadership, moving with purpose, confidence, and determination. She realized that one human could not be judged by strength alone. His mind, his spirit, and his ability to inspire others were forces that could rival an empire. Marcus paused for a moment to assess the battlefield. Smoke rose from disabled vehicles, soldiers attempted to regroup, and the colonists moved confidently, supporting him in every way. He knew that the Empress's ultimate forces were still approaching, but he remained calm. He had survived impossible odds before and would do so again. His mind was his greatest weapon, and he had taught the colonists to use theirs as well. The final assault began. Heavy vehicles, aerial units, and elite soldiers converged on the colony in a coordinated attack. Marcus activated the final phase of his plan. He used the terrain to create bottlenecks, triggered traps that disabled key vehicles, and used the colonists to guide and support every action. The battlefield became a maze of obstacles that the enemy could not navigate effectively. The colonists moved with precision, following Marcus's instructions, reinforcing weak points, and taking advantage of every opportunity. Even the youngest colonists played a role, setting small diversions or managing supplies. Every human was contributing to the defense, demonstrating that courage, intelligence, and teamwork could overcome overwhelming odds. The elite soldiers attempted a final push, but Marcus had anticipated it. He struck decisively, disabling vehicles, disrupting formations, and neutralizing threats. The colonists reinforced barriers and created new obstacles. One by one, the enemy forces were forced to retreat, their confidence shattered, their strategy defeated. The battlefield belonged to the humans. Above, Empress Zalira watched in stunned silence. She had never imagined that a single human could orchestrate such a defense, inspire an entire colony, and defeat her army. Marcus Kane had not only survived, he had triumphed through intelligence, courage, and leadership. The Empress realized that humans were not merely a species to conquer. They were resourceful, adaptable, and capable of extraordinary bravery. Marcus Kane had proven that one human, thinking freely, acting decisively, and inspiring others could challenge even the mightiest empire. Marcus looked over the battlefield. The colonists were tired but victorious. The enemy had been repelled, their forces in disarray. He had done what many believed impossible. One human had defied an empire and protected an entire colony. The colonists gathered around him, their eyes filled with admiration and gratitude. Marcus did not boast or celebrate. He simply guided them to ensure that everyone was safe and prepared for any remaining threats. Empress Zalira remained in her observation platform, her mind racing. She realized that she had underestimated the human spirit, assuming that fear and numbers alone could ensure victory. Marcus Kane had shown her the power of intelligence, courage, and unity. One human, acting with purpose and inspiring others, had defied her armies and claimed victory where defeat seemed inevitable. The colonists celebrated quietly, not with loud triumph, but with the satisfaction of knowing they had survived against overwhelming odds. Marcus moved among them, checking on the injured, reinforcing defenses, and ensuring that the victory would be lasting. The lesson he had taught them was clear. Courage, intelligence, and teamwork could overcome any obstacle, no matter how great. As night fell over Veora, Marcus stood atop a ridge looking at the stars above. The Empress's forces had been defeated, and the colony was safe, for now. But he knew that the galaxy was vast and challenges would come again, yet he was not afraid. He had survived impossible odds before, and he would do so again. The story of one human soldier who had defied an empire single-handedly had reached its climax on Veora, but it was only the beginning of a legend that would inspire generations to come. High above, Empress Zalira reflected on the events of the day. She had witnessed courage, intelligence, and leadership that defied her expectations. Marcus Kane had not fought for glory or conquest. He had fought to protect his people, to inspire hope, and to demonstrate the true strength of humanity. She understood at last that humans were a force unlike any other. She had seen the power of a single human defying an empire, and she would never forget it. Marcus looked over the sleeping colonists, feeling a mixture of relief and determination. The battle had been won, but the war of survival was never-ending, yet he was ready. He had proven that one human, acting with intelligence, courage, and leadership, could challenge an empire and protect the lives of many. The victory on Veora would be remembered, not as a tale of strength or numbers, but as a story of human ingenuity, spirit, and unbreakable courage. The Empress, high above, silently acknowledged Marcus Kane's achievement. She had faced countless opponents, yet none had left her so moved, so challenged, so awed. One human had shown her the meaning of courage, intelligence, and the unyielding spirit of humanity. The legend of Marcus Kane, the soldier who defied an empire, was born, and the galaxy would remember it for generations.